everybody. My name is Luke Marr, and this is Hot Lamode. And today on Hot Lamode, we're doing our Vanity Fair Oscars After Party Fashion Roast and Review Part 2. One more to get through after this. Listen, we are back. I feel like somewhat alive. There's been a lot happening in fashion. I thought I'd maybe have the day after Fashion Week. Not the case. Quick tidbit on the Demna going to Gucci thing. Initially, I was like, huh? But I'm kind of changing my mind on it a little bit because I'm having nostalgia from very early Balenciaga. AKA, I went on the real and I bought a couple things that 18-year-old me would really be like, damn, never thought we would get here. So I'm interested, but I just wanted to give you that update. So, without further ado, let's get into this roast and review. First up, we have Alessandra Ambrosio. Now, she is wearing Tony Ward, and her jewelry is by Ariel Saidian. I think it's all vintage jewelry. I like the silhouette of the dress. I actually love the top of it as well. The bodice, this beautiful embellishment that's like dangling off. It feels very grape-esque to me, or maybe berry-esque, I would say. It almost like is the juicy berries that come off of a bush and bloom. But when we hit the thigh area and it just goes blank sheer dress, confusion, and then the, no offense, ugly square patchwork metallic reflective embellishment that goes on the bottom of the skirt was really where I was like, no. Hip up, honestly gorgeous. I just don't know why we would ruin an otherwise pretty nice gown. Next up, we have Andrew Garfield, who's wearing Gucci, and he's also wearing a watch by Jaeger-LeCoultre and David Yurman jewelry. I actually like the watch. Again, I know nothing about watches, but like I like that black band, sort of silver square watch face. Learn something new every day. And I have to say, I think that the suit works. Gray suit, full gray suit, even down to the shirt. I don't really love how unbuttoned the shirt is, to be fair, but I do think that the suit cut is good. It's something that he's been doing for a while. It's not really that exciting, but at the same time, again, it's like Gucci until yesterday had no creative director, so it was kind of like you're just going off vibes over there in the world of Gucci, not really trying to make too much of a statement. I think the color does work well. It feels him, but as per usual, I want more. Next up, we have Catherine O'Hara and Bob Welch. Now, Bob, boring black suit. Next, Catherine, though, she's wearing Gabriella Hearst and jewelry by Lagos Jewelry. I like this dress. I really, really like this dress. From afar, you're kind of like, oh, what is that cacophony of striped colors in yellow and orange and red and sort of burgundy? But when you zoom in, you can see that this dress is fully crocheted, which is a very Gabriella Hearst thing to do. It's also very color-wise Gabriella Hearst. A lot of Gabby's work is very red and orange and yellow and burgundy. This sort of ombre effect, these stripes, that's really what she does quite well. It's kind of like her version of like show pieces, and then she also makes just nice wardrobe staples in sustainable, well, ethical fabrics. I just think that the crochet is beautiful. I think it's cool. I think it's different. I think it's something that fits in with the brand as well. But I think now that I'm looking at the stripes and I look at the intricacy of the fact that they had to crochet each of these colors almost perfectly, otherwise you'd have to like go back and fix it, and like that to me is miraculous, and I enjoy. I also think that it does sort of flatter the body too. Like you can see a little bit that it nips in at the waist, which again for like a crochet, I'm like, all right, cool. Like we're doing form fitting. So this works. Next up, we have Christina Ricci, who is wearing Rodarte and jewelry by Martin Katz. From afar, I'm like, but when I zoom in and I see that these stripes of florals are actually all embellished sequins and crystals, kind of miraculous. Like handwork, I'm giving it the handwork. Well, not that kind of handwork, but this kind. I think it's actually kind of radiant and beautiful. When we're in the skirt area, and I think that it's less skin tone. Overall, the dress I actually quite like from the hip down. I think maybe a less sheer fabric might have helped because when you see it in just the black of sorts, I think that the stripes actually work rather well. They're quite complementary. I think that when you have her skin showing through underneath, I think the colors are a little less complementary. And also, like a black brief would have really helped, I think, here as well. I like the dress. I just don't know if it was maybe the right dress for her. Next up, we have Hailey Bieber, who is wearing Saint Laurent as well as Tiffany & Co. jewels. I actually like this. Normally, I'd be like, oh, it's a black dress, but to me, this feels very Saint Laurent. I feel like Anthony Vaccarello was very into this idea of looking back at the archives of Saint Laurent and bringing it forward, and I actually don't really mind it. Normally, I'd be like, oh, it's a black, beautiful ruched gown with satin bows. Where's the pink? But I think that the black by itself also very much so works. So yeah, it's a ruched sort of cocktail length dress that then falls after you have it hit this sort of satin wrap belt bow situation at the knee, and then it flows into a chiffon. It's not my favorite, but it's fine. I don't mind it. I just think that the bows feel very Saint Laurent in and of themselves. I also think that Hailey's really like a product diva. Hailey wears certain things and people are like, I need it. So I've kind of changed my context of her branding. I don't really expect like as much excitement and craziness. I'm more and more like, what is the market pushing that Hailey is going to deliver an ROI on? So, sorry, this video also might get a little bit like theory. It's just because I'm coming off Fashion Week and I haven't had really a chance to talk about all my thoughts that have been clouding my brainiology. Next up, we have Hari Nef, who's wearing Valentino and jewelry by Lori Radkin. I like this. I've been enjoying the Alessandro isms of Valentino. I think that he adds his own element to it, and also there are these flourishes that do feel very Valentino in and of themselves. I mean, if I look at just the sleeves, these little ruffles, Valentino, and yet at the same time the ornate gold embellishments, the kooky old vintagey-ness of it, very Alessandro. I think that he's actually doing quite a good job of enveloping himself into the brand. Might not look like the Valentino that I've been looking at for quite some time, but I still see it. This I quite like. The red bow at the center maybe could do without, but again, it feels actually quite Alessandro to me. I think that the ruffle at the floor works wonderfully. Again, I think the sequin work that goes throughout all of this sheer fabric is quite nice. The plunging neckline, I see it, I get it. If nobody else wants to, up to you. Next up, we have Hunter Schafer, who I think owns the VF after party. Like, I think that she might have possibly been in the process of acquisitioning it. Like, she wants to own it, and she's done it year on year. She's wearing 16 Arlington, and her shoes are by Aquazzara. I love this look. I think that the dress itself, a plunging gold bias cut gown in silk, is really lovely on her. It's not super crazy out there, but also just sort of doing like beautiful vixen, sexy glamour, Ati. But when you have the coat on top, it just adds an element to it. This like long, shaggy faux fur coat that is white, but does have these sort of splotches of black. I always think that it reminds me a little bit of ermine, even though clearly like it's not ermine, but something about that idea of a white fur with little elements of black in it. I just always think of luxury. This one just sort of transforms it from being King Henry VIII to, I don't know, 1970s shag, and I'm sold on it. It's great. And also, like, we're always adverse to a coat on a carpet. And I think that Hunter is such a perfect example of, like, don't be scared of a coat. A coat helps. Next up, we have J. Alphonse Nicholson, who is wearing gray. It's a brand I don't know, but I would like to now know it because this ombre splotch, sort of seafoam green black suit is really cool and different and something that I feel like I haven't seen much of from menswear. And again, I think it's just a great example of like, you can look refined, you can look dapper, you can look very tailored, but you can also have a little bit of a panache, a splash, a excitement to your wardrobe. Next up, we have Jessica Williams, who is wearing Richard Quinn as well as Marie Moss jewelry. I like this dress a lot. Yes, it's a little bit weddingy, sure, but at the same time, I don't really care. This scoop neck line in this beautiful satin, and it's this creamy white sort of 1950s silhouette ball gown, wedding gown. But the fact that it does scoop down like that, and if it didn't have the embellished bra padding there, like the girls would be out and about. I kind of love it. It's that perverse Richard Quinniness that is really rather exciting. But I also have been hearing about Richard Quinn that, like, Richard, he runs a business. And I think that he understands that his customer loves a wedding dress. They go to him for wedding dresses. They also love his big, beautiful gowns too, but he really does like deliver in a bridal market. So I think that this is quite smart. I also love the bra element. If we zoom in, we can see that it's a lace sort of overlay, or at least it's maybe not a lace overlay. It's embellished to look like a lace overlay. And then you have this crystal encrustment that goes right along the top of the bust line. The little black bow in the center, I love it. It's perfect. I think this is a nice moment. We have Joey King, who's wearing Miu Miu as well as jewelry by Repossi. I think this is a great example of Miu Miu embellishment working really, really well. I feel like during the Oscars, wasn't as sold in certain moments, but this I think is magical. It's this yellowy, creamy, form-fitted column gown, not really too crazy. It has a nice little chiffon back train, but A, it hits the floor perfectly. B, the floral embellishments are what Miu Miu does so well. I was at the show, and the thing that really always takes me isn't like Alex Earl in a waxy leather jacket skirt combo, although I was looking. It was these silk dresses, really quite simple in form, but full of embellishment, like crystal embellishment. Though I thought those were the most ravishing people in the world at that moment. And so I think that this embellishment, this idea of pushing, this idea of creating florals that almost look like prints, but in reality it's made out of crystal, that's what Miu Miu does well. And when it does it well, I don't really need anything else. I think she looks striking. All right, we're gonna have to do a heavy blur here. Next up, we have Julia Fox, who's wearing Dilara Findicoglou. I love it. I think it's so funny. Now, I know you're gonna say, Luke, how do you think that this is any different than what Bianca Censori wore on the red carpet to the Grammys? And I'm gonna say, because it is. It's different because the idea of the hair is there, and that's what's fun. That's what's different. It covers the region. It's not just a sheer piece of fabric called a dress. It has, I don't know, different dimension. To me, it references merkins, the idea of women in, what was it, the 19th century, I believe, not wanting to get lice in certain regions. So they would shave, but then people still liked that look. So they would have fake hair and they would put that over it. And that was like a real thing, real history, people. And it had utility. I kind of love this idea of your hair is so long that it comes down inside the dress and it covers the other parts of your body. Dilara Findicoglou also was always exploring this idea of femininity and womanhood and how women should perceive themselves and how they should dress themselves to be perceived. So I always think it's a rather ravishing, interesting look from a woman designing for women. I love the idea of women designing women. It's pretty and it's beautiful and it emphasizes, but at the same time, like, women should also be able to design for women where it explores things in less of a straightforward idea and manner. This to me is that, and I think all of those explorations by women designing for women are valid. And this, I don't know, I think it's fun and cool. Next up, we have Catherine Hahn, and she's wearing Fendi. It's a box. They put her in a silver box, and I'm sure the embellishment is beautiful. Like, it looks beautiful. It's just the square shape of the neckline and then the way the dress just falls, and there's nothing else about this dress except for the fact that it's silver that is interesting. And even then, I was being generous with interesting. I don't know, is it like the gif wink thing? I'm just not getting it. And speaking of weird shapes, let's talk about Kelly Rowland, who's wearing Stéphane Roland, Alexis Pittar, and Maison Marinoir. This dress in and of itself is it's just kind of a strange silhouette. You have this sort of oversized shoulder that then continues on this sort of triangular direction. You have a plunging neckline, but dress is sort of not boxy, but definitely oversized, and then it hits the knee. It begins this mermaid train, and so it's this idea of like, I'm showing off the body in a plunging neckline, but I also I'm over saturating the silhouette so it's larger, so I hide the body, and it's kind of like a mind muckery. I love it though because it hits the floor fantastic. The way that it hits the knee, like, it really is quite frankly radiant. It's a strange silhouette now, and maybe over time, if we see it more, you could get used to it and sort of start to see the beauty in it. But I don't know, something about it like spoke to me, and I was like, normally I'd be like, ooh, that's ugly. But something about also the perfectness of the tailoring of it, the way that it hits, I think it works. I also rather like the bangles and the jewels. I think that they're quite helpful in terms of adding emphasis to the arm area. Next up, we have Kylie Jenner. I couldn't get a full picture of Kylie, but she's wearing this dress by Ashi's Studio. She's wearing this sheer lace gown, which I'm gonna give it to her. It fits her impeccably. Like, it nips in the waist, it shows off the hip. It's kind of fantastic. Maybe it's not. Or maybe it's like it's sheer, but it's a real light sheer. Like, the fabric is heavier, so you can see through to the body, but like not that much. Because it seems like there's nothing really covering like the pelvic region, and I would assume that there would be something covering that. So I don't know. What I'm gonna say is it fits her well. Really well. Next up, we have Lakeith Stanfield and Casimir Treese Stanfield. They're both wearing some. I love both of them. Again, for Lakeith, it's really a simple Saint Laurent suit, like double-breasted black pant. It's wide. I love. But the thing that I'm really enjoying is this bow tie, which I can't tell if it's part of the shirt at this point or if it's just like a bow tie that is frilled and quite shapely like that. But I think it's so cool. I saw it on Catherine Deneuve at the Saint Laurent show, and I was like, diva. And I stand by that. It's cool. I just think, again, like, it's a fun way to take on something a little basic, something a little simple, and, enjoy it. Make it a part of the outfit, but not super crazy, but just doesn't feel like, oh gosh, wow, I've seen this a million times. I'm so happy you wore it. Like, no. And as for Casimir, I think this dress is radiant on her. Again, I think it's a great way to take a black dress, these big, beautiful sleeves. I think they're a bell sleeve. I can't really tell, but if they are, amazing. If they're not, I don't really care because they look like a bell sleeve to me, and it has almost like a bat wing quality to it. It's just cool. Like, they are so cool. Next up, we have Laverne Cox, who's wearing vintage Mugler. I also really enjoyed this. I think that the dress fits her fantastically. I love the sheer, almost stocking-like glove. And then the vampiric-esque collar, I think, adds to it. Like, it doesn't take away. I think that it's weird, wacky, cartoony Mugler-ism, but still very glamour, which is something that he was very into. I mean, think about, like, the robot. Think about the lobster. They're weird, and yeah, they're almost like something pulled out of a strange comic, but at the same time, like, still glamour, still beautiful, still diva. I think that Count Orlok's wife here, I'm sold. I'm enjoying. I would like it. Next up, we have Lily Rose Depp. She is wearing Chanel Haute Couture and jewelry by Chanel as well. Listen, if you remember this dress from the runway, you would remember the fact that there was a white Under Armour long sleeve shirt underneath this. So, like, in and of itself, it's better, but the Virginia years, they were tough. I'm not really super into it, but again, as far as Chanel goes, like, I hate so much of it that if it's not a total affront to my eyeballs, I'm like, okay. Appreciate that we took the Under Armour top off, and I appreciate just the sequins that create these little bows, because that's what those are. The embellishments on the top are bows, and they're actually quite lovely looking bows when we zoom in. As for the skirt, I think it's fine, but I also wish that maybe there was like a little pink element to the skirt, or I don't know, there's a green element to the top to like tie them together, because it just kind of looks like she rolled out of bed, threw on whatever she had, said, let's go. But also, whatever she had costs probably about $80,000 and 100. Cool. Next up, we have Maud Apatow, who is wearing Bodhi and jewelry by Mikimoto. I actually kind of love this dress. Bodhi, if you don't know, is a brand that started off doing menswear. Now they also do women's wear, but a big element of the brand is that it's often using upcycled products. That's how it really got started. It's designed by a woman named Emily Adams Bodhi. I think this dress is just kind of fantastic. There's something so simple about the fringe that sits at the top of the dress, and the fact that you have these beautiful silver bugle beads that actually pipe the neckline as well as the straps and the little element of the waist. And then if you can see, the bugle beads are strung to create that fringe that overlays. Then you have this nice cream satin that also is what is sitting underneath the fringe as well. I don't know. There's just something about the use of the fringe to create an exaggerated proportion up top that then the bugle beads that sit on the waist sort of snatch it in without actually like snatching it in. And then the way that the skirt is gathered sort of again builds out. So it's a smart way of creating that hourglass shape without actually like cinching Maud in. I think it's lovely on her. I don't know. It has a classic old school feeling to it, which aligns with the brand's identity, and yet at the same time doesn't feel like something I've seen a million times before. So I was pleasantly surprised. Next up, we have Megan Thee Stallion. I don't know who she's wearing. I tried to figure it out. I couldn't find it, but it's a halter that actually fully exposes the breasts, then has a high-waisted skirt that shoots green feathers out of it, and then is a form-fitting, I assume, silk with green nipple pasties. I do hate it so much. It's just a weird dress that I don't really understand the point of. I don't like mind the girls. Like, you got the girls, live with the girls. They were given to you. I'm into it. Maybe they weren't given to you. Well, so either way, they were given to you technically. Just depends on who gave it to you, your creator or your doctor. But whatever. I don't mind the girls being out and about. I just think that it should like kind of have a purpose to it. And I don't really feel like there's a purpose except to have them out. I don't really understand what the point of the dress is. It's definitely a new silhouette that I have not really seen. Maybe it's not a new silhouette, but it's definitely a silhouette I haven't really seen in a hot minute. So, in that regard, I'm certainly intrigued. I just don't get the proportions of it. There's not really much else to say and to go off of. It's just putting nipple pasties on and calling it a day. I don't know. Her hair looks great though. Next up, we have Miley Cyrus. She is wearing Maison Margiela. This is the first, I think, Maison Margiela dress that's been done, or at least in recent memory. That's not John Galliano. It's not Glenn Martins, who is currently the creative director of Diesel and also is now going to be the creative director of Maison Margiela as well. Something about those Belgians. There's something in the water, I always say, about those girls in Belgium. They got it currently. And then the jewelry is by Boucheron. I can't really tell if the dress is like intentionally fitted like that or if it's not and it's just poorly fitted, but I think of the history of Margiela and think of deconstruction, reconstruction, things being sometimes a little bit off on purpose, and that's why I'm looking at the waist of the dress and being like, oh, it's meant to be like that. The dress is a little bit Dada art movement where it's like we're putting a urinal in a gallery space and saying art. And I'm like, I don't know about that. The thing that's interesting about the dress technically is that instead of darts, there are zippers there. And I don't know if they're like functional zippers or not, but it does play into the margin of like deconstruction, taking a dress apart and then reconstructing it at a later point, or utilizing elements of the interior of garments, the actual like working functions of them, to be details of embellishment or things that should be highlighted. So I get the zipper. I just think it's hard, I guess, to reckon with them here. I don't know. That to me, like between hate and not like is like failing. So I'm not really understanding. I really like the bag and all that jazz. I just think that something about the fit of it in the way that it's puckering feels off, and I lose out on it being like a funny ha ha he he joke, and it just feels like a flop. Next up, we have Purna Jagannathan, and she is wearing Loewe as well as Christian Louboutin and Marie Moss jewelry. Now, I know you're going to be like, Luke, you literally just dragged Miley Cyrus's zipper dress, but this at least I do think is fun. They were ridiculous on the Loewe runway. They're still ridiculous now, but I still enjoy them. They're these sort of tent crinoline dresses with actually a really lovely sort of curved neckline that goes quite high and off the shoulder little detail, and a very sheer floral chiffon that's layered over top and creates quite an interesting silhouette. Normally, I think with dresses like this, you wouldn't really want the crinoline to be exposed if you're going to do like a floral like that. So the idea of exposing it by using such a sheer light fabric definitely plays into Jonathan Anderson's idea of like reconstructing notions. But I actually think the colors work quite well. I think that, again, that neckline is really quite lovely. The way that this one drapes also feels different than others that I've seen. And I do think that this print, compared to others that I've seen, is quite complementary. You don't have to like it. I thought it was cool. But again, it doesn't have to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's a-okay. Next up, we have Rachel Brosnahan, who's wearing Carolina Herrera as well as Brilliant Earth jewelry. I like this. I think this is nice. I like the yellow on her. I don't mind the ruching. I think the crystals all over the bodice area is fine. I like the mermaid skirt. To me, it feels very Wes Anderson, creative director of Carolina Herrera. It's bright. It's poppy. It's lovely. It's that idea of like just nice clothing on her. I think that a dress like this on somebody of a paler complexion can be a little tough to pull off. I'll be honest, I wouldn't really put myself in that marigold yellow, but I think she's doing it. I think the necklace works with it. I don't think it's crazy out there, yet at the same time, it still is bright, poppy, eye catching. I think she did a pretty solid job. Next up, we have Renee Rapp, who's wearing Vivienne Westwood and Loft jewelry. I hate this dress. I really, really hate this dress. It's like a form fitted black dress that has draping that goes and creates like a weird heffalump on the hip, and then it wraps around the bodice and it creates like a one off the shoulder. And I get Westwood draping, I get it, I understand it. I just don't think that it works. I think that not all draping is created equal. Some things are really just not attractive, and I think that this form of draping is just not great. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, I don't think that it really helps. I don't think it makes anybody seem smarter, brighter, cooler, more anything. It just not a nice dress. And that's sad because I like Renee Rapp. Next up, we have Ricky Martin, who's wearing a suit by Berluti as well as Rahamanov diamonds and Azatur jewelry. I actually think, honestly, that this is pretty good except for the pants. The suit, pant, it's a little tapered for me, and then because it's all silky like that, it kind of folds and the front break is weird, but hey, okay, whatever. I like the waistcoat, I like the jacket, I like the tuxedo little shawl lapel, lovely. I like the tie that matches the lapel, great. What I also think is fun, styling wise, is that big necklace of diamonds. I think it's different from what menswear usually is. I think it adds a sort of shiny, sparkly element to it. I think that the matching bracelet is cool. It doesn't totally like give femme queen realness either. I think that it's a cool way of bringing about diamonds, which usually, I don't know, it's not really like a men's thing for the most part, or at least traditionally or stereotypically. I think this does a nice job of like layering that into the ornamentation that goes into like ties and shirting and waistcoat, and yet it doesn't like totally take attention away either. Next up, we have Ruth Nega, who is wearing Michael Kors and Pacharavipa jewelry. Learn something new every day. It's a white turtleneck dress. I think that there are better Michael Kors looks. It feels a little boring, a little disinteresting. I'm really not into it at all. The same thing with the Hunter element before. Kors has been doing these beautiful big faux fur coats. They're like these big chubby, brightly colored, lovely faux furs, and like I think that would have helped maybe a green, a pink, I don't know, on anything. It doesn't really land to me, even though it's like a really simple look. I think whites, it can be tough to do, especially when it's clingy like this as well, even if it's, I'm sure, in like a beautiful cashmere. And now I'm going to go on the defense about Sarah Paulson's blood clot dress by Marc Jacobs, as somebody very kindly called it. She's also wearing jewels by Boucheron. Here's the thing about this dress that I think is amazing. It's ridiculous. It's out there. It's crazy. It's kooky. And it's very Marc Jacobs to me. Clearly, it is full of foam and paddings and all those kinds of things. It creates this exaggerated comical neckline, a bustle at the back, a big sort of oofed hem. But at the same time, it's this really interesting exploration from Marc Jacobs of over exaggerating these really 1960s silhouettes, playing on them. You can say that's ridiculous, it's so ugly, but the dress is not wearing her. That's one thing about Sarah Paulson in general, but the dress isn't wearing her. The proportions, they work. They don't feel too, ooh, that's such an ugly dress. I can't believe she's wearing it. Although you could feel that naturally. But it's not like these big elements, flaps, collar pieces are like smushing her face in and she looks like she's, I don't know, pressed against a window. No, it perfectly kind of frames her face. I think the same thing at the back. I think the same thing even with the length. Like her legs are still there. It's a whole lot of dress, but it doesn't take over entirely. There still is Sarah Paulson in there. So if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I like it. I think it works. I think it's funny. I think it's cool. I think that the inspirational referencing behind it is lovely, and it's transformative clothing. It's more than meets the eye. Next up, we have Serena Williams, who is wearing Dolce & Gabbana and Audemars Piguet. It's not my favorite Dolce dress. I think that it fits her really beautifully and she looks lovely and she's doing like the Angelina Jolie leg out black dress moment. I think that the black lace with the crystals on it. I just wish that instead of you having the chiffon that comes from the top of the hip area, I wish maybe it was just like a full lace gown or something like that. I just don't like that disconnect, especially for like a brand like Dolce that has the infrastructure to make sure that that's not necessarily like what you need to do. They do so much custom that I expect more from a brand with such capacity. It's not the worst dress I've ever seen. Is it also a little Sherry Hill? Not to be mean to Sherry Hill, but like, yeah, and I don't know. I love Serena. I don't want to see her in Cherry Hill by Dolce & Gabbana. And last but not least, we have Timothy Chalamet, who is wearing Hyder Ackerman for Tom Ford. So he's wearing Tom Ford by Hyder Ackerman, who I think this was put out before Hyder's first collection that was shown in Paris that looked impeccable. It was really just a wonderful take on this idea of beautiful luxury classics, but done in a stylized manner, which a lot of people don't do. Like they just put things on the runway and they say, oh, look me, quiet luxury, beautiful quality. And then you look and you're like, I call that a showroom appointment. There's a difference. There's a fashion show and there's a showroom appointment. This could be a showroom appointment most of the time. Tom Ford was a fashion show. There's a difference. I actually love this shawl lapel. I think that it's a polka dot on that silk tuxedo jacket. The wide leg pant, finally, Timothy is out of these skinny jeans that are way too long, so they bunch and crunch at the bottom. I'm very happy about Hyder because at least in this regard, I feel good. The one issue maybe is the unbuttoned shirt. I get it, after party. I'll let it go because you lost. Fine. I shan't harp on about it, but I really love the size of the pant. Finally, very happy about it. I'm excited to see what happens next for Tom Ford and Timothy Chalamet and Hyder Ackerman. So let's talk about best and worst. Best, I'm gonna put Kelly Rowland in there. I'm gonna put Jessica Williams in there. I'm gonna put Joey King in there. I'm gonna put Hunter Schafer in there. I'm gonna put Maud Apatow in there. I'm gonna put Laverne Cox in there. I'm gonna put Sarah Paulson in there. You don't have to like that decision, but Timothy Chalamet. As for worst, Ruth, Megan Stallion. Oh, Miley Cyrus, I didn't like. Oh, I'm adding Lakeith and Casimir to best. I'm gonna put Catherine Hahn. I'm gonna put Alessandra Ambrosio. I'm gonna put Renee Rapp. That's good. Let's be done. Thank you guys so much for watching part 2 of our VF After Party Roast and Review. We'll get to part 3, I promise, very soon. As always, I will see you guys later, and TTYL.